Thus, to posterity, he became known as Ethelred Unrud, Ethelred the Ill-Advised. The account of Ethelred's reign that gave rise to this unflattering onomastic portrait was preserved in the C, D, and E manuscripts of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and was manifestly hostile. Nevertheless, it seems likely that much of the advice the king received was indeed deeply questionable, and that he was largely unprepared for what was coming over the horizon. Ethelred, then, was both ill-advised and unready, with these two routes towards calamity converging in the king's habitual reliance on a character known as Edric Streona, Edric the Grasper, a man of humble origin who rose to become ealdorman of Mercia in 1007, and from 1009, Ethelred's son-in-law. In the eyes of Ethelred's hostile chronicler, evidence of Edric's perfidy and cowardice was apparent early on. In 992, Ethelred's planned to thwart the raiding fleet by gathering to London all those ships that were worth anything, presumably with the aim of trapping the Vikings in the Thames estuary, was scuppered by Edric, who, allegedly, passed details of the plan to the Viking army before making himself scarce. The fighting, when it came, compounded the disaster. The Vikings, as was their habit, made a great slaughter. It was probably only a matter of time before this waterborne horde turned its attention to London, the richest prize on the river. On 8 September 994, the feast of the Nativity of St. Mary, the fleet came to London with 94 ships. The host was led by two men, named in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle as Olaf and Sven, who came with the intention of burning the city. Olaf we've met before. He led the army that triumphed at Maldon in 991, and Sven we shall meet again. Both would ultimately rise to be kings in their native lands. Olaf as Olaf Tryggvason, king of Norway, Sven as Sven Forkbeard, king of Denmark. In 994, however, they badly underestimated their foes. At a time when English armies were routinely crumbling in the face of aggression and English towns burned like beacons wherever Viking armies marched or their ships moored, Sven and Olaf finally found a city of people determined and pugnacious, willing and able to bloody the noses of those who tried to harass them. In their assault on London, Olaf and Sven suffered more harm and injury than they ever imagined that any town dwellers would do to them. This was not the end of this Viking host. In the months that followed, it wreaked, in the words of the chronicler, indescribable harm across southeast England. But it set a pattern for London's role in the years ahead. In 1009, another marauding Viking host led by a formidable warrior known as Thorkel the Tall settled on the Thames for the winter, sustaining themselves by raiding Essex and other neighbouring counties. Yet, though the raiders often attacked London, the city would not yield so easily. "Praise be to God it stands sound," the chronicler exhaled. But perhaps no one need have worried. Vikings, as the scribe explained with the benefit of hindsight, always fared badly there. If the city couldn't be broken, however, it could still be squeezed. Today, maritime Greenwich is a model village of riverside gentility, an elegantly poised memorial to enlightenment and empire. The home of the tall ships, dominated by a gleaming temple of white stone that served first to train the officers of the Royal Navy and, in latter days, as the National Maritime Museum, to house their memory. The youths who passed through the Greenwich schools would go on to become the men who mapped and administered an empire, a world stitched together by mastery of wind and tide, of cartography and time. And above them, up on the hill, the astronomers of the Royal Observatory brought the heavens closer to the earth, clockwork motions traced with fine-grained precision, fixing time, charting the course of stars and planets, rationalizing and crystallizing the movements of the cosmos for the efficient operation of navigation and the reckoning of time, establishing the prime meridian of the world. Joseph Conrad imagined the Thames as an outlet, a conduit from which the dreams of men, the seed of commonwealths, the germ of empires, spread outward into a darkly limbed world. But the maritime history of Greenwich was set long before the enlightened